I'm Tom Schuman, editor of the Indiana Chamber's BizVoice magazine. Our current issue kicks off a series of stories on the implications of our aging workforce. Joining us today is Ellen Miller, Executive Director of the Center for Aging and Community at the University of Indianapolis. Ellen, people are certainly aware of the baby boomers, the aging population, but it doesn't seem to have taken effect on the impacts on the workplace. Why do you think that's the case?
Well, I think it surprised me when we first started to do our work in this area that most employers seem to focus more on near-term planning for their workforce issues, more on next quarter, next year perhaps, but rarely on the next 5 or 10 years. The reality is that we now have 77 million baby boomers who are turning age 65, what we typically think of as retirement age. More than half of them will be turning 65 in the next decade, so the time for that workforce planning is now.
Workforce-wise is the title of the initiative the Chamber's working on. Talk about some of those qualities that the older workers bring to the workplace.
In 2007, we did a survey at the Center of Indiana employers, and we asked several questions. Early in the survey, we asked a question about what were the most important qualities in workers, and later on in the survey, what were the most important qualities that you observed in older workers. And there was a remarkable match between those qualities. So employers are seeing that the most important qualities are the ones that they observe in their older workers, things like reliability, judgment, good customer service, being able to count on somebody in a crisis. Those sorts of things are especially prominent in older workers.
Well, and as we wrap up, there seem to be a couple of myths out there about older workers. Talk about one or two of those and how they're not really totally accurate.
Well, I think that the two that are most disturbing to me are the idea that somehow older workers aren't willing to learn new applications or technologies. And the second one is the idea that somehow older workers are not as creative or as flexible as younger workers. It's not, I'm not suggesting that somehow when you turn 50 you somehow become creative and interested in learning. If you weren't when you were young, you probably aren't when you're old. But the idea that those personality characteristics are very consistent across the lifespan. So if you were curious and interested in learning when you're young, you're probably very likely still that way when you're an older person.
Ellen, thank you so much for your joining us today and your work on this important topic. You can read much more in the current edition of BizVoice. Log on to bizvoicemagazine.com.